The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are those of the hosts and guests as individuals, and do not necessarily reflect those of advertisers or sponsors. This show is intended as entertainment and commentary only. The producers strive for verisimilitude, but nothing said on this podcast should be taken as fact by the listener or viewer without performing due diligence.
That existence, the physical universe, is basically playful. There is no necessity for it whatsoever. It isn't going anywhere. That is to say, it doesn't have some destination that it ought to arrive at.
This is Keep Your Hat On, a show by three nerdy nobodies and one nerdy kind of somebody about nothing in particular. Keep Your Hat On is brought to you by the Narrowband Broadcast Network, NBBN. The focus is on you. By PodSquadPDX.com, painless podcasting, and by the kind support of KYHO fans everywhere through Patreon. Patreon, create on your own terms. Season 3 of this fucking nonsense already? Wow, the pandemic and broadcast standards are really taking their toll on things. Oh, wait. That's today's topic. My bad. Anyway, Dr. Mark is busy not having COVID like we suspected last episode, but he is busy setting up the new nest situation. And I'm busy being a new doggy daddy. But I know 3 guys who aren't busy with anything significant. So, meet the new year, same as the old year. Here's Andrew, Robert, and everyone's favorite stereotypical 80s metalhead, Chris.
And hello and welcome back. This is Keep Your Hat On, the show where hell even we don't know where we're going to go. I'm Andrew Scott along with my good friends Ty Robert Anthony and of course Christopher Vacano.
Hey.
And we are Dr. Mark Peterson-less today. He's out doing home buying things with his lovely girlfriend, Alex. Hello, Alex. Everybody say hi to Alex.
Hey, Alex.
Hi, Alex.
Happy home buying.
There we go.
Hi, Alex.
And, Happy New Year to everybody, guys.
Happy New Year.
Yeah, Happy New Year, Alex. There you go.
Yeah, Happy New Year.
How was everybody's New Year so far? I know Chris's answer because he was here.
New Year's, New Year's Eve was fine. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And, coming into, I've actually decided coming into 2022, everybody keeps making the observation, that I just realized it's 2022, TOO.
Yeah.
And I've decided I'm going to view it as 2020 2.0, as in this is another chance. This is a re-challenge. This is an upgraded version. So
really, you're going with upgrade?
Yes, I am. I'm going with we need a BIOS reset.
What,
and a
do we
patch.
just need like a bigger dumpster to light on fire? What?
There you go.
This is the new version. We got a new opportunity. It's 365 days in front of us that we don't know what they're going to be, but I'm putting energy into the thought that it's going to be a decent year.
Well, bless you, Chris. I don't fault you for that. I think if we were staring at this as the abyss we might think it feels like, it would just be too hard to bear. But I will go with you in this way. I think we're losing sight of some important positive things that we can bring from both 2020 and 2021. This is not the beginning of the pandemic. No, it might be knee-deep into it or whatever, and I know that we're all looking for the air quotes end of the pandemic, but it's not how it was when it started. It's not as bad as it was when it started, where we had no therapies, no treatments, no ideas or understandings about what we're dealing with. Now, that's different.
It's not new and shocking.
No, we have, and all the things that have come online, aside from the vaccines, which are all, showing to be very effective, especially the mRNA vaccines. And again, everybody here at KYHO, we're all stabbed and boosted. We encourage you to do so as well. But we also have things like monoclonal antibody therapy.
Can you say that again?
Monoclonal antibody therapy. Monoclonal antibody therapy. Monoclonal antibody therapy.
Okay.
There. Now I feel really good about myself.
We gotta put a beat to that.
As a professional talker, I'm really proud of myself. I don't even have to edit that. And I'm certainly not going to beatbox over it. But, we have antibody therapy. We have, remdesivir is something that, helps some people, but its help profile seems to be pretty limited. But more than anything, what we really have, even in light of Omicron, we have such a better understanding. Medical science and pharmaceutical research science knows so much more about this virus, and that is showing benefits to us now. And what's really more interesting to me is this pandemic might be the beginnings of our ability to deal with future pandemics before they turn into pandemics. One of the most exciting things that's happening right now in pharmaceutical research science is the use of nanoparticle technology.
What was that again?
Nanoparticle technology. There. Yes, I'm just winning so hard today. Nanoparticle technology in vaccines that are a way to address viruses in a whole new way. Where, and again, we have a long and unfortunately storied history with coronaviruses in the human population. They all start zoologically. They all start in an animal. Often it's a bat. Sometimes it can be rats, ferrets, mice.
Pangolin.
Pangolins. Yeah, exactly. Which I'm really sad about because that's one of my favorite animals. Yeah, pangolin is fun to say too.
It's a
pangolin. See?
And they're cute.
They're cute. But the big thing about it is that it's often from those animal populations where it jumps into the human population. And so, everybody, well, not everybody, but a lot of us, our generation, remember the SARS outbreak. The thing that we tend to forget is that COVID-19 is a SARS infection. The actual vector is SARS-CoV-2. And monoclonal antibody therapy addresses the infection by way of taking antibodies that have been developed in other people and then putting them into you. And it's a great therapy. It's a valuable therapy. But this new nanoparticle technology therapy in a vaccine means instead of just vaccinating you against COVID, we're on the cusp of being able to vaccinate people for all coronaviruses, for everything in the SARS family. That's going to be revolutionary to be able to vaccinate, even if it's a vaccine that requires an annual, like our flu stab.
Yeah,
being able to protect you against all respiratory viruses in that family, that's world changing. We're right there.
And building on, I mean, actually placing the scientific advancement aside and the fact that our scientific and treatment and prevention picture is entirely different than it was in 2020, there's another piece that gives me a lot of optimism, which is we're 19 months into this thing, basically.
You sure it's not 19 years? It feels like 19 years. Okay.
And my math, people can quibble.
His math is never wrong.
But we're nearly 2 years into this.
Yeah.
And we're adjusting socially. We are figuring out how to...
Some of us are.
Well, I think...
Did you say some of us?
Some of us.
Some
of us are doing fine.
Yes, there are the people who are still being foolish and idiotic and putting themselves at risk and putting other people at risk.
Well, not only that, but primarily putting themselves first.
Absolutely. Pure selfishness. I agree. What I'm talking about is a bigger sort of structural change in that we've figured out ways to conduct business, to do work, and we're getting accustomed to that. I mean, you remember at the beginning of the pandemic, you had a nation of people who had to learn how to use Zoom who had never touched it before.
Yeah.
For example. And I'm just citing that as one example. And now it's like, everybody uses it. It's just like, it's part of life, right? We've integrated it into our lives. We've made a lot of those adjustments. What I'm seeing in the few times that I'm out in the world is, people are masking, people are distancing, and it's becoming normalized how we live in this context. And I find that as cause for a lot of optimism. Because that's going to keep going.
No. This has got to stop. People need to stop putting themselves first. People need to start considering everybody else. We need to get back to a place where, man, I don't even need to know you, but I want to be in the same room with you without having to worry that I'm going to die in the next.
I think, yeah, no,
3 weeks.
I don't think you and I are disagreeing. I think the point I'm making is that as it's becoming more normalized for the majority of people, the minority that are putting themselves first are going to feel more and more pressure to fall into line.
Yeah, I think, Ty, what Chris was saying is more along the lines of that what he's been seeing is a normalization of the respect required.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which and I feel you on your knee-jerk reaction because if you left it in the other way, it winds up being a growing callous in society of, fuck you, I'm gonna do what I want, and there are no repercussions for that. I do want to caution, though, that, and for all our listeners out there, Ty and Chris and I all live in Portland, Oregon. And we understand that Portland, Oregon is kind of a special place. The Pacific Northwest and the West Coast, we're different. We're Cascadia, and
we are, yeah.
And we show, generally speaking, I think, and a lot of people that have come and visited me here always remark on, and I'm speaking for Portland. There's a slightly different attitude that, Chris will be able to speak to. Chris will be able to speak to this phenomena that, Portland's got a particular attitude and a particular social cachet about it where a lot of people come in and say, wow, it's super friendly here. Everybody will talk to you. And, and Seattle has a different representation, what we often call the Seattle stare.
I've never heard Seattle stare, but there's the Seattle chill, and
the Seattle stare comes from, it's the look that you get when you're buying coffee and somebody looks at you and gives you the look of, you're not from here.
Exactly. You're not one of us. And that gets to one of my really good friends in the hemophilia community who grew up in Kentucky now lives in Bothell, which is outside of Seattle. And when I moved to Seattle with him, he refers to Seattle as the Great Cool Contest.
Yeah, that's exactly
it. And I think that perfectly captures Seattle's vibe.
I am so much cooler than you.
I used to think that Seattle really reminded me a lot of San Francisco.
Oh, there are shared attitudinal traits.
And then the city went and blew up. Right?
Yeah, exactly. In the 90s, the city blew up.
And just became corporatized, and it's just a corporate...
Well, and it's still very bifurcated. It really is a half and half. Half of it is, corporate, huge tech money, and the other half of it is hipster till I die attitude. That, again, and look, we're not throwing shade at you, Seattle. We all love you, Seattle. Okay, well.
Because they throw shade at us all the time.
Well, that's true.
Here in Portland,
that's the same. I mean,
those Portlanders.
I grew up I grew up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and of course it was always Milwaukee versus Chicago. Sorry about that, Bears. But the Bears. But, here we have a certain view of life. We have a certain view of the way we interact with people out in public. And we understand, the three of us here in Portland, we understand that doesn't necessarily always translate around the country. There's going to be different attitudes in, Mark's one of Mark's hometowns, Mobile, Alabama, or Sandusky, Ohio, or anywhere else. Pick your place.
Even New York. I mean, other urban.
We don't even have to leave
New
the
York,
West
LA.
Coast.
I mean,
no, we really don't. There's a huge difference between Portland, Oregon, and Eugene, Oregon, or Portland, Oregon, and Salem, Oregon. The huge disparity in the makeup of those two cities.
But where I'm going with this is...
Where are you going with this?
We understand that this attitude isn't pervasive around the entire country, let alone the entire world. However, for the most part, there are people doing the right things and being conscious and being helpful. And I don't want everybody thinking that we're still in worst case scenario. We're not seeing everybody being selfish. We're not seeing everybody going, fuck you, I'm going to do what I want. There are more people doing the right thing and helping than not.
Yeah,
but even saying so, we still need even more people to do the right thing.
Exactly. First of all, this is not a pandemic. This is an endemic. This is not going to end. We are going to have to adjust.
Not going away.
And I think that speaks a lot to what Chris was saying, even though I initially misunderstood it. We are starting to adjust to the idea of this is an endemic. Hopefully this virus decides to tone down and be relatively equatable with the flu. That would be really, really nice. That's the best I think that we can ask for in this situation.
And there is a possibility that with Omicron, we're seeing that. We don't know, and I don't want to be misunderstood in saying that Omicron is coronavirus light. It's not. It's dangerous and it's significant, and you should try to avoid getting it at all costs, because the big thing we don't know is, even with Omicron cases, we don't know if we're going to have the same level of long COVID symptoms that some people are getting.
Long-term damage.
We don't understand how this virus might affect other parts of your body, like cognition or energy levels or all that. We don't know. So we don't want people thinking that, oh, well, I'll just get it and get it over with. Because one of the other things that we see that we didn't see with the beginning with alpha, beta, and a few of the other variants is you can get reinfected with Omicron. And having gotten alpha or beta or any other previous strain of coronavirus does not protect you from Omicron. Omicron is like a fucking master lockpick that can get into pretty much anybody. So don't get it. Do everything you can to not get it.
Back to what I was saying. This is an endemic. We need to get used to the new paradigm shifts, because what used to be normal 2 years ago, I don't think that we're ever going to come back to. But at the same time, something's got to give. I spent this first year of this pandemic being able to go to work, being able to go to a shelter. It was relatively low-key shelter. We were taking a lot of precautions, but I was able to go to work. I was considered a mandatory worker or whatever it was.
Were you considered an essential worker?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Just because if you trace it back, if I'm not working, people are on the streets. And if people are on the streets, holy crap, this thing is going to spread.
Right.
But my point is being able to go into work that first year of the pandemic gave me some kind of social structure. Mm-hmm. Whereas in the last year or so, I've been working from home. Now, for those of you that don't know, Chris, Andrew, both introverts. And so this kind of lifestyle, sitting in this bubble, so to speak, really works well for them. I'm finding as an extrovert that I am starting to get really, really itchy. I need a crowd, but I need a crowd that's going to be kind of safe, that I can go, well, some mistakes are going to happen, sure, but for the most part, if I just wear a mask and just,
right. Everybody's rowing in the same direction.
Absolutely.
To help have this thing happen that we all need.
Right. Well, and I can relate to that a little bit, Ty. I'm more of an introverted extrovert.
You're more of an extroverted introvert, you mean?
Yeah, something like that. One or the other. I'm somewhere in the middle of the continuum.
You don't mind being alone from time to time, but you'd much rather be able to go out and be social.
I'm comfortable alone, but I also thoroughly enjoy, and I find it very energizing to be out and around people. And so, while I don't feel the itch nearly as profoundly as I'm sure you do, it has been there for me, and it's like,
I'm actually starting
want to go out and be around somebody.
You all will probably recognize this a little bit more. I mean, I think that everybody felt it over the first lockdown, particularly. I am starting to have a time slip, right? Things are just starting to get away from me in terms of time. Oh, I told you I would call you back, and that was 2 weeks ago. What the hell? Are you sure? Really? 2 weeks? Are you? No, right?
Right.
So I'm really starting to have that warped sense of time. That's starting to happen again.
Well, because, time has become this sort of flat, gray, amorphous thing where it doesn't have the punctuation points that we structure our lives around.
Yeah, and I don't want to minimize its effect on other people in my extended family, my circle, all that. Yeah, I'll admit to the fact that and I am a classic introverted introvert.
The introvert's
I can
introvert?
be an extroverted introvert. I can do people. Yeah, I am the introvert's introvert. Yeah, I can turn it on. I'm not one of those people where I am always quiet. I mean, you guys know me when we're together. None of us can shut the other up. And that's because you guys are my people. When I don't have that, I can be fine for weeks at a time, not seeing really anybody. And that I'm not antisocial. I think I spent most of my social capital in my 20s and 30s. And in my 40s, I kind of shifted over to where I like being alone. I like doing my thing. I like having my partner and our little bubble of safety, but it wears on even me. And the way to get to the next thing where we can be social again is, as I said earlier, everybody doing the right thing, everybody giving a shit, not caring that you have a mask on. I dare anybody who's listening to send me information about somebody who died from asphyxiation because they were wearing a mask. There is no such thing. You know who dies of asphyxiation? People with COVID pneumonia.
Yeah, people in an ICU with a tube down their throat.
Exactly right. You want to avoid asphyxiation.
So, Chris, didn't we start this show with you having all this optimism?
All right. There's a point.
Have we drug you down into the muck yet? In the mire?
Put a point on the board for yourself there, Ty.
No, you have not. You've not. I'm standing my ground on this because I feel like 2022 is the year where we start really building momentum in adjusting to our, and I hate this expression, but it's appropriate here, to our new normal.
And I'll say this. I think 2022 has the ability, if anything, to force our hand, and not only our hand collectively, but more than that, to force the hand of those people who have been refusing vaccines, who have been refusing social distancing, who have been refusing to change their behaviors, because this isn't going away. And those of us who have done the right things are getting tired of this. And those of us who might not have been willing to make a little bit of a ripple on the surface of social waters by saying, do the right thing. No, there are more people now being vocal saying, I am tired of this. This is continuing because not enough people are doing the right thing. And the social pressure that we're starting to see now You can't go to a concert unless you're vaccinated and you can show proof of vaccination. You can't get into a club when they're open if you're not willing to show proof of vaccination. You're not going to be able to serve in the military if you don't get vaccinated. Now, I'm not going to sit here and argue about vaccine mandates because I don't want us to go down that road. But even if it's not official pressure, what you're starting to see now is pressure from the private sector who does not owe you the same rights and liberties as the government does by way of a mandate. They can discriminate. They're fully
as long as it's
able to discriminate.
Not on a protected class.
Exactly right. And you're going to start seeing more of that. And I think 2022 maybe will just wear the other side into compliance. And you know what? I don't give a fuck how it happens. I want us all, before we go to break here, I want us all to appreciate the fact that at a bare minimum, COVID has been an incredibly powerful teacher by way of making us examine the social constructs that we all took for granted. We were
it actually
autopilot.
did wake us up, and not just the social constructs, but look at all the fissures and the cracks that we now see because of this virus, whether it's the healthcare system, whether it's working infrastructure.
And what it is these fissures and cracks, I mean, the way I think of it, they were already there before the pandemic hit. The way I see it is,
we just weren't looking at them.
The pandemic pulled back the skin and revealed the ugly viscera underneath.
Right.
And we're all looking, well, at least we see it now and we're aware of it. And that's where action begins. That's where change begins.
Well, I tell you what, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back here with a discussion of something that's not truly COVID related. But until we come back on the other side of this is Keep Your Hat On. I'm Andrew Scott, along with Ty Robert Anthony and Christopher Vicano. And on behalf of Dr. Mark Peterson, we'll be back in just a second. Don't go anywhere.
Hey everybody, Michael, your stalwart announcer here, the voice of the Keep Your Hat On podcast. We really hope you're enjoying the shows we put out every month and the bonus goofiness we try and throw in. If you do, we'd really appreciate your support. While we'd love it if you could help us out with a monthly donation by heading over to patreon.com/NBBN, please don't forget that you can also support us by telling your friends, relatives, the hot Amazon delivery guy, hell, your potted fern, about the show, and do the like, click, and subscribe thing. That's free, and it helps us out more than you might suspect. We just want to keep putting something good out into this bananas world at this extra bananas time, and we want you along for the ride. No matter what, thanks so much for audio visualizing. Now, let's get back to the show.
And hello and welcome back. This is Keep Your Hat On. I don't need to keep hammering you in the head with that, but that's Ty Robert Anthony along with Chris Vicano. And, you know, we had just finished talking in the first segment about kind of where we are in society and culture as far as how we're living our lives in light of coronavirus. But one of the things that I've been noticing over the course of the pandemic is how we've changed our diet for entertainment, information, and really what we fill our ears and our minds and our eyes with. You know, everybody is now so dependent on things like Netflix and YouTube and all these other streaming platforms and services. And in my mind, that's kind of a good thing. You know, due to our media habits, We've completely and utterly redesigned the media landscape over the last 5-10 years to the point where the networks, the big networks, when we were growing up, it was the big three, and then suddenly it was the big three and the snotty-nosed little one coming along behind it.
Well, and then it was the five, Fox, and then UPN.
Yeah, and all that business. But they're no longer driving the cultural discussion when it comes to entertainment. They're kind of turning into, I don't want to say also-rans, but they're not running the show anymore, as it were.
They're almost kind of obsolete.
Well, at least that model that they operated under is now obsolete.
It definitely seems like the mainstream media is always racing to keep up.
Yeah, now, before they were cutting the path, now they're trying to keep up. I think you're absolutely right. But that brings us to a discussion of, where did we first start seeing this shift? And this shift started happening long before streaming platforms, long before the internet. And
Nixon.
Well, you're not entirely wrong, oddly enough. But, Chris, you said that you were watching a documentary recently that kind of dovetails into this.
Yeah. Actually, to your whole point, and I'm going to say the quality of the content on the streaming platforms now is amazing. I mean, it's really and so I'm following this documentary series actually on Hulu called The Dark Side of the 90s, and of course, as a Gen Xer, it's got particular appeal to me, and I think it's that's the primary target audience. I think Xers are the ones who are really going to look at that and appreciate it, because that was the time period where we were involved in participating in and shaping culture. We were the target.
We were turning into the demographic that
because we
meant
are the
something.
Gen X, so we were not doing this.
Right?
Well, we were counter-programming it. I mean,
or at least we were trying to look like we weren't doing this.
Well, and Dark Side of the 90s talks about that at some length, about how we were counter-programming what the industrial powers, the music industry and the film industry and the television industry were trying to sell us. We were like, no, this is bullshit. We're going to do our own thing.
And hey, it's encapsulated in one of my favorite slogans from our generation: kill your television.
Kill your television, absolutely. So sort of steering back to the subject of kind of where we're at in terms of what we consume and what we feed ourselves. I mean, before the streaming platforms really took off, we had a lot of, reality TV.
By the way, listeners, that's Chris's lawn guy in the
my
background,
apologies.
so we're going to have to deal with that.
So we got the reality TV thing, and I used to really peg the birth of reality TV as being 2003 when the writers' strike happened. And I'm not saying, please don't interpret me to be blaming the Hollywood writers. I think they were absolutely right to strike. I think they were being mistreated. I fully supported them in that. But what happened was the studios and the television networks said, fine, screw you. We're not going to do written programming anymore. We're going to go grab Mark Burnett and launch Survivor.
Exactly.
And we're going to start feeding you all of this garbage that doesn't take writers. It just takes a bunch of idiots in front of a camera fighting with each other, and you will gobble it up. And people did.
And I think we really might have a misconception of what reality TV is too. Because while on the surface it looks like this is reality, this is very choreographed. This is very scripted, and this is very edited.
Right.
So I think there's a really important distinction to make between, or not necessarily between, but reality television. What Chris is speaking to more is less reality television, in air quotes, and more unscripted.
Oh yeah, like the
television.
It's kind of contrived reality television.
Yeah, because there's nothing real about reality most reality
television. And
television.
It's interesting that you mentioned Cops, because that really emerged in the 90s, way before the writers' strike, right?
Wait.
Yeah, it really
wasn't that like the the late 80s? Wasn't there like 2 strikes?
I was just going to say Cops is really kind of one of the OGs.
And Cops was
when
in
it
direct
comes
response to a writer's strike, but I don't know that it was the 2000.
No, it certainly wasn't the 2000.
No, the 2003 strike is where what we now think of as reality television really started gaining traction. Things like Survivor, Big Brother, and then later, after the new millennium,
Housewives of Marrakesh. I don't.
Well, Real Housewives,
right? Exactly, or whatever.
And if we trace it back, this is actually where I connect this up to this documentary series I've been watching. Is one particular episode caused me to completely rethink citing 2003 as the real origin point or the real turning point. And actually, it goes way back into the 90s, and not even nighttime television, but daytime talk show. Because in the 90s, we saw this transition, this steady but very fast transition from sort of high-minded, socially conscious daytime talk like Phil Donahue and
Dick Cavett and all those.
Yeah, guys that were. It was very topical. It was. They would pick things apart. It wasn't unlike Keep Your Hat On, actually, in a sense, where sort of they would have these lengthy, in-depth discussions about things. But then that rapidly deteriorated into shock TV.
Yeah, sensationalism. And I mean, I want to be clear, too, in that, yes, there are exceptions to this curve on the scale that we see of when this happened. There were shows much earlier that, if anything, planted the seeds for this kind of talk. You bring up Cops as far as one of the original reality shows. I'm going to reach back into the 80s and point everybody's memory back to The Real World on MTV, which was a groundbreaking show.
And that set the stage for Big Brother
and all these hidden cameras in a house full of.
So I gotta say, I gotta tell you right now, while I can talk about this superficially and the effects that I've seen it have on those around me, I have never been a reality television fan.
I've not as far as
Cops was never my thing.
No, I don't want to watch people suffer for fun.
If I want to watch soap operas, I'd go to daytime television, right?
But there is clearly, I mean, that's us specifically, but there is clearly an American appetite.
Oh, most definitely. Otherwise,
watching people fight with each other,
it wouldn't be there.
Oh, and it's not just American. I need to point to the fact that this is much more, instead of American, I will say Western, because Britain has a huge tradition of things like, I mean, Big Brother is still a huge going concern for them in the UK. And then there are shows like, here in America, we've got Jersey Shore. In the UK, they've got all sorts of shows showing young culture. No, not even that. There are
the ultimate in reality.
That's the ultimate in unreality.
Exactly.
No, they've got shows like Made in Chelsea, which are all these again very tawdry, showing essentially trendsetters and bougie type living. And really, you can go back. There are so many examples of what we'll call reality television that are anything but real. But this shift that happened, this changing attitude of what we constitute as entertainment, really did start shifting tectonically in the 90s. There were shows that laid the ground for it in the 80s. And when you go to talk shows, Oprah is a force of nature. I believe that Oprah Winfrey is a genuine force for good, but at the same time, Oprah got their start at a time in the 80s where, number one, there were really very few women.
Yeah, it was
that
hollowed
were-
out. The whole thing was hollowed out.
It was all
It was basically Oprah and Jenny Jones.
yeah, well, it was all, I mean, before Oprah, it was all white men.
Yeah.
But the change between, I want to say, casual talk about social issues, Bill Donahue and all that started changing in the 80s. And Ty brought up somebody that I was going to bring up, but he beat me to it. And that's a guy called Morton Downey Jr.
Big mouth. Yep.
And I watched Morton Downey Jr. only because back then I was getting home from the clubs at, 2, 3 in the morning, and they would replay Morton Downey Jr. Now, for those of you who aren't aware or don't remember, Morton Downey Jr. was like the hyper version of, he was like a shock jock
Oh, I was just going to say,
in
Morton
talk
Downey
radio.
Jr. really, and I watched Morton Downey Jr. a lot.
He was
And I'll tell
really
you-
provocative.
Oh,
That was that. I mean,
he was less provocative and more antagonistic.
the shock value and that antagonism
Yeah.
was what I was tuning into, and I was tuning into him for the same reason that I was tuning into Howard Stern at the time.
Mm-hmm.
What's he gonna do next?
Yeah, show me something I haven't seen before.
And he was I guess I'm going to pigeonhole him a little bit. But he was a very interesting dude, and we'll put a link in the description to some information about Mort. He was kind of a libertarian. He didn't really have a political ideology. He came from a very interesting background and kind of was a bit of a social chameleon. But what he did do better than anybody else was get in your face. And that's what his spectacle was.
Yeah.
That was really where, for me, the sea change started happening in TV broadcasting. Now,
yeah, he was unlike most other hosts who would set up the conversation and then let it unfold and let the conflict happen between the people on stage. Morton was incredibly abrasive with his guests.
he would provoke that.
He would
to
get in there
happen.
and he would yell at people and he would argue with them right there on screen and he would just tear them apart. Yeah.
Can you imagine being a guest on his show?
But I'm saying he would provoke that confrontation. And then you started to see, shortly thereafter, you started to see this new kind of television where instead of the Phil Donahues who were phasing out at the time, I think Donahue went off the air in like 89, 90.
And Hugh Downs
somewhere
was
around
right
there.
behind him.
Exactly, Hugh
And
Downs.
wasn't there Marvin? What was his name? Big media mogul.
I know who you're thinking of. Merv Griffin.
yeah.
And
yeah.
Mike Davis.
course.
And
Mike
Mike
Davis,
Davis.
yeah.
Yeah, all those guys were being phased out because they were coming up on their due dates.
Mm-hmm.
But then you started seeing shows like Jenny Jones and Ricky Lake.
Mm.
Well, and even early.
On the other side, the most important one that probably survived that first wave and made something was Jerry Springer. Now, I happen to know a couple people, or knew a couple people, who were actually, and this was kind of pulling the curtain back on the reality of what this reality was. Most of those conflict-based shows were all scripted.
Mm-hmm.
They would literally have production points on, this is when this person gets introduced, this is the point of conflict, this is what you will do to antagonize those people.
More so than pro wrestling.
Oh, absolutely.
Not only that, but the producers would go back into the green room and get the guests really, really wired
that's
up
what I'm
before
saying.
they came out.
It was literally on the clipboard of, okay, now you have to go back into the green room,
Feed them cocaine.
tell them this is what was said about them, and get them ready to come out and be very antagonistic. And I had people that I knew that were kind of making a career of showing up on these shows.
I had a friend who did that.
where they would show up, and it was a show about I found my boyfriend cheating on me with a dog or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And people that I knew would be on these shows. A lot of them at the time were being produced in and around the media bubble in Chicago.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where that was the epicenter of this. That's where most of the Springer moved from Cleveland to Chicago.
Yeah.
Oprah was in Chicago. And I want to punctuate the early days of Oprah, she was down in the muck with the rest of them.
There was a time where she was a little bit more salacious than I think she would probably want to remember as well.
It was the Jenny Jones murder incident when everybody pulled back from it.
Yeah.
But Jerry Springer doubled down on it.
Exactly right. And we'll put a link to the tawdry history of Jenny Jones in the show notes as well. But all this shift in broadcast television media, I also remember very acutely the shift in broadcast radio. And part of it is because I'm a radio and broadcast nerd. I grew up, radio was my first love, not television, radio. I would listen all night long to radio. I had that overheating transistor Bakelite radio under my pillow, where every morning I'd wake up and I'd smell that hot electronic smell. But really, this is, at a minimum, is mirrored and quite possibly started in broadcast radio. We have so many memories of how broadcasting affected our lives and set the social tone that we all lived through. And on television, it was all very tawdry. It was all very sensational. It was about, the big three, sex and drugs and rock and roll. On radio, though, what we wound up getting was where the political change of tone happened. And not only the political change of tone, but the intellectual change of tone. Back when I was growing up, overnight radio really was, at the watershed time, which is about 11 p.m., local radio broadcast would shift over to things like local interest, very small focused talk shows about the community. That's when they would give time to local broadcasters to have a show because the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, mandated that a certain number of hours per day be devoted to local content. And that's where they would ram in all the shows that, quote unquote, nobody ever listened to, talking about local things. But when the FCC, and this is something that pre-show we all kind of said, well, this was a watermark. When the FCC really had its claws clipped, we grew up in a time where, as I said, there was a mandate for a certain percentage of your broadcast day being devoted to offerings that were locally focused or were not something that had a huge, massive appeal, but still the FCC demanded that there be representation for it. But after the FCC change, a lot of that was taken away. And what happened was broadcast radio changed to a lot of syndicated broadcasts that were more national in focus. And that's where we started getting this idea of overnight radio. And the leader of that change, there were two of them. One was a daytime and one was a nighttime, and they were both syndicated and they were both wildly popular. On the political side, in the 80s, this is when we started getting people like Rush Limbaugh. I listened to Limbaugh in the very late 80s and early 90s. Rush Limbaugh in the late 80s and early 90s was a nobody. He was a broadcaster out of, the Sacramento area. We can either thank or blame Rush Limbaugh for the rise in popularity of Snapple, because Snapple was one of his first sponsors. But on the other side of the daytime, nighttime dial was a guy named Art Bell. And Art Bell had a show called Coast to Coast AM. And when I was in college and was a musician and DJ and roadie and stuff like that, I would listen to Art Bell at night because Art was on from midnight till 6 a.m. And Rush Limbaugh brought in conservative talk and conservative points of view. Art Bell really, for me, was the rise of the conspiracy theory entertainment machine. And we heard things on Art Bell's show that you didn't hear anywhere else. I mean, Art Bell was one of the first places that I heard about Terence McKenna and people like George Noory, who took the show over from him in a little while. But, and I'm not saying that there was no conspiracies before Art Bell. I mean, God knows there was. But there was this shift in all of broadcast media to give voice, for good or ill, to things that hadn't had the same level of visibility and the same public airing. And I don't want to say that that's where broadcast came off the rails, but it certainly is in the 90s, the time where broadcasting shifted from being something that everybody could enjoy, whether or not you agreed with it was not salient, but everybody could enjoy an experience, to we're going to give more room in the discussion for things that were pretty fringe up until now.
You know, I really have a little bit more. I, like Andy, am just really more in tune to the radio and what the radio gave me as an individual from a little kid all the way up. And so when the Clinton administration deregulated some of the FCC regulations, right? We had
it kind of gutted it,
and that's exactly what it does. Because what we have now is we have three major conglomerates that own every or almost every single radio station in the U.S.
Yeah, and I think that that's an important point. That's not something that people today appreciate.
Because they are controlling the messaging.
Exactly. Not only are they controlling it, they have a stranglehold on it. When the three of us grew up, there was always at least 2 stations in your market that were really free-flying and their own beast. Now
late 80s. Yeah, late 80s. I had KROQ,
right,
which managed to still somehow be a beacon even after, for a short time anyway, even after these regulations were done away with. And I had 91X, which came from south of the border down in Baja. They had a huge transmission tower, and I could get the shit that nobody else could.
Well, and this is where I had a little bit different experience of radio in the 80s and into the 90s, because for me, radio was all about music. I wasn't at all interested in talk. I always thought that was boring. And growing up in Denver, every station on the air was local, had its own flavor, had its own sort of unique thing. And in the late 80s, I was a little headbanger kid.
We all were.
And so you know, every Friday and Saturday night, I was glued to Metal Shop. I had my little crappy Maxell tapes, and I was recording it so that I could listen to it all week, because that was the only all metal show you could get during the week. And then Magic came to the AM dial. Z-Rock out of Texas.
Oh, dude. Oh, man, I'm so glad that somebody else remembered Z-Rock.
All Metal Shop all the time.
Mark the Shark. And actually, interestingly, Mark the Shark on Z-Rock, actually, when Z-Rock folded, he jumped over to one of my stations in Milwaukee and was a very popular DJ in Milwaukee. And I believe at first he jumped over to 93 QFM. And then later wound up for a little while on Laser 103, which is now the Hog in Milwaukee. But I'm really glad somebody. I was working overnight at a gas station.
Z-Rock.
And we didn't have Z-Rock in Milwaukee, but we would be able to get and our Z-Rock was FM. We were getting the FM send of Z-Rock out of, I believe it was either I think it was Detroit or possibly Ann Arbor, Michigan, and on good weather.
I'm guessing it was probably Ann Arbor.
But yeah, there was a shift going on in the tone. But right about then, and I mean, for me, Z-Rock was 86,
87-ish, yeah,
86, 87. I was working at I was
and
working at a gas station
Gonzo
overnight.
radio.
Well, actually, it was slightly less gonzo than you might remember, because one of the things that Z-Rock was doing was they were one of the first stations where they would replay their shows off cartridge, off of, well, at the time it was DAT, it was digital tape.
Right.
But you would be able to hear the same show either 6 hours or 12 hours later. They're working on it, something like that.
It was on a 6-hour cycle, I think.
Right about that time, 92, 93, first Clinton administration. That's when suddenly you got these organizations, you started hearing these radio broadcasts saying, a Shamrock Communications. And then suddenly it was Clear Channel. And now
where it became like the where I began to notice it the first time that I really noticed it after these regulations went away. And by the way, we had KNAC down in Southern, and KNAC was just nothing but 24 hours wall to wall. Bang your head until it's bloody.
Hey, KNAC was one of the places that broke Metallica.
Yeah.
Well, and what's interesting about syndicated radio is, and this was the point I was going to make, is at the time, I thought Z-Rock was the best thing since sliced bread. Now, looking back, hindsight being 2020, I rue the day that Z-Rock ever came along, because now every single station in this market is national, with like one exception.
Right. So,
and that bugs the hell out of me, because there's no uniquely Portland thing.
Well, now I would go back up. I'll come back to that in just a minute. The first time that I really noticed this conglomerate thing was there was a radio station that popped up that called itself Pirate Radio.
Right.
And not only was it in Southern California, but Pirate Radio was being broadcast all up and down the United States.
It was anything
it
but
was the exact
pirate
and they
radio.
wanted
pirate
to
radio.
give you that impression that they were breaking the laws and breaking the rules and everything.
And they were
else.
stealing it directly off of the original model, the OG that I grew up with, where I had friends that lived in France and the Netherlands and the UK, and they would send me tapes of real pirate radio. And by the way, tiny little factoid, little interesting thing here. You want to know who really started out their performance career in pirate radio? Idris Elba.
No.
Idris Elba was a legit pirate radio broadcaster in the UK, playing hip hop and house on a boat out in the
Oh, right.
And there's that movie.
And
that movie is about that.
I used to get cassette tapes sent to me from friends. We would have tape exchanges, because what we had here in the States that was cutting edge was college radio. And so I would send friends of mine in Europe tapes of our college radio. Our big college radio station in Wisconsin was WMSE, which was broadcast radio from the Milwaukee School of Engineering, where my dad went to school. And so, I would send them tapes of REM, Driving and Crying, all these big, the B-52s before they broke.
That's one of my fondest memories of my days at ASU was I was actually on the air for 3 semesters as a DJ
those
at
days,
KASR.
God, I miss those days. And I think that's where we're going to kind of wrap this discussion up, is we live in a time now where we suffer from a combination of an embarrassment of riches by way of how you can get your media or entertainment versus, or at the same time, I guess, this homogenization of media. And that's one of the reasons why I'm such a big supporter of the media creators that are doing their own thing on YouTube, on Twitch, on Instagram. And that's one of the reasons why, look, we're 4 guys, currently 3 guys, but we're 4 guys, and we're going to keep doing this stupid podcast, even if nobody listens, although thank you to everybody who is listening. Not because we want to be famous, not because we want to be rich. I think we've literally earned, we're coming up on our year anniversary. I think we might...
$15?
I was going to say 20.
Oh, okay.
And that doesn't count merch sales. To Jason, we love you, brother. We
Jason,
love
you're
you,
a star,
Jason.
Man.
We're not doing this for money. We're not doing this for popularity. We're not doing this for attention. We're doing this because in this pandemic, this is one of our management tools for all 4 of us to keep our fucking sanity. And at the same time, maybe have a conversation that we wouldn't normally have in our waking hours. Or our time, not on mic.
Or our conscious hours.
Right. Good point.
We're also all doing it and going to continue doing it because I think we also share the same philosophy that it is okay to be the voice out in the wilderness.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I don't know about you guys, but I am doing it for the money and the fame. And quite frankly, after a year, I'm a little bit pissed.
Don't blame you there. I dragged both of you into this wacky ass idea of mine more than anything because I wanted the world to hear, and this is something that I'll throw out there to the listening audience. Ty and Chris and Dr. Mark didn't know each other until I insisted that we all do this. And I will throw another person into the mix. Our dear announcer, Mr. Brumage.
Right.
Miss you, brother. Haven't heard your voice in a while.
Well, you're going to hear it this time because I'm going to make sure that I get him his information to do our intro here.
You need that beautiful baritone.
Yeah, well, not a baritone. He is a bass. He is a basso profundo.
Fair enough. My bad.
Mark.
Apologies.
Again, for everybody who doesn't know, Dr. Mark is my philosophy professor from college and my mentor. And Ty and I know each other from our Zen practice here in town, and we helped build a Zen temple together. And Chris is my partner's former partner, although we live in a weird little bubble of help and support to each other.
We're a new kind of family.
Mr. Brumage is a former compatriot that I used to work with at the Portland Opera and at the Broadway across America. And I dragged these guys into this with me because more than anything, I just wanted to do something that might possibly make people smile throughout this miserable experience that we're all going through. And that really points me back as kind of a way to button this up. If this were 40 years ago, I would be hoping to listen to something like this on that little plastic Bakelite transistor radio stuffed under my pillow. We don't have that anymore. And so I wanted to make that happen for people, even if it's 12 people around the world. If you would have told 14-year-old me that at some point in the future, there would be people in India and Pakistan and Brazil and Paraguay listening.
Don't forget Nepal.
Nepal. Listening to something that I was doing, it would have blown my fucking mind.
Wait, Nepal?
Yeah, we had a listener in Nepal.
We had?
I don't know. I haven't checked the metrics lately.
But we did it one time.
Now I'm even more pissed because I'm actually, the little fame and money that I do have, I'm losing right before my eyes right now.
Exactly. And you know what? That 16 cents that you've earned from doing this show, that would go a long way in Kathmandu.
Yeah, well, see?
But we're going to keep doing this. I mean, God, what I wouldn't give to be able to do a classic radio show and actually play music. This is kind of like our version of what we all grew up with our local morning team, except for one of us is a PhD. There was a lot of good that came out of that. There was community building. There was generating a sense that we're all in something together. And it wasn't politicized. And look, I'm not lying, and I'm not going to try to make it sound like the three or the four of us don't have a political point of view. Of course we do. But it doesn't have to be everything. We can talk about so many different aspects of life. And before we sign off, one of the things I'm going to seed the conversation next time. Ty, you've already taken care of this. Mark and Chris and I are going to be getting caught up with you, because one of the things that we do want to start doing here on this show is we have opinions about things like film and TV. And we're going to, the three of us that remain, we're going to watch Don't Look Up. And we're going to talk about it when we are on our next show. But we are out of time for this show. On behalf of Dr. Mark Peterson, who's busy setting up his nest with Alex. Hi, Alex, again.
Hi, Alex. Hi, Mark. We miss you.
Did you say
this
Mark,
is what,
or did you say Narc?
I said
no,
Mark.
I would not say
okay.
Narc.
Okay.
Definitely not. I know him too well. But this has been Keep Your Hat On, the show where, as we just proved, we don't know where we're going to go. I'm Andrew Scott. That, of course, is Christopher Vicano and our good friend Ty Robert Anthony. And
goodbye.
Thank you so much for joining us, and see you next time, because we may end up miles from here. Thanks a lot, guys. We will talk to y'all soon. Everybody stay safe, wear your mask, get your boosters, and fucking take care of each other, huh?
Well, there's a chunk of time you can't get back. From Portland, Oregon, this has been Keep Your Hat On, a big little show about a whole lot of nothing in particular. Keep Your Hat On is a narrowband broadcast network production in association with PodSquadPDX.com. Andrew Scott, executive producer. Robert Anthony and Chris Vicano, associate producers. Our theme music was written and produced by Andrew Scott, along with help from Ron Kajawa. Website design and maintenance by Vicano Creative, Chris Vicano Webmaster, available at VicanoCreative.com. Audio and video production by Andrew Scott, available at AndrewScottMedia.com. Got ideas or comments for the show? Email us at talkback@kyhopodcast.com, and don't forget to like, click, and subscribe. On behalf of the boys, I'm your announcer, Michael Brumage. Thanks for listening. I guess.
For Mark the Shark Peterson, the Burnt Tony, and Chris Volcano, I'm Andrew Scott. See you next time on Keep Your Hat On. The only show with hats.
NBBN.
The Narrowband Broadcast Network.
The focus is on you.